We're just taking a few minutes while everyone enters the room. I'm watching the bottom as the room starts to populate, and then I'll begin with the introduction. So thanks to everyone who's joining us today. So if you're in room 2, you are in room 2, and if you're here to see or listen to the discussion on Kurds in Turkey and the Turkish-Russian relations presentations, then you're in the right spot. Today we'll be spending about an hour and 10 minutes with our 2 discussants. And what I'd like to do first is let you know I'm Dr. John Dolan, Faculty Director with the School of Security and Global Studies with American Military University. And joining us today is Dr. Evren Altinkas from the University of Guelph. And he'll be doing a presentation on Kurds in Turkey, equal partners or discriminated minority. Dr. Altinkas received his undergraduate degree in international relations from DOKO's University in Izmir, Turkey. He received a postgraduate degree from King's College, London, with a dissertation on Kurds in Turkey in 2000, and from DOKO's University. He obtained his doctoral degree in 2011 based on his dissertation comparing the development of the concept of intellectuals in Europe and Turkey. Dr. Altinkas has worked as an assistant professor in several universities within Turkey and has several published articles in academic journals and book chapters. His research areas are the history of the Middle East, Turkish politics, Turkish history, international organizations, comparative history, international law, the Cyprus dispute, and intellectual history. He received the Chevening Scholarship for the academic year of 1999 to 2000 in order to pursue his Master's in Arts degree at King's College in London. Since July of 2018, Dr. Altinkas has been employed as an assistant professor in the Department of History, University of Guelph. Also joining us today is Mr. Ahmet Yavuz Gurler. He is from the University of Trakya and a PhD candidate, and he'll be doing a presentation on the Kurdish factor in Turkish-Russian relations. Mr. Gurler completed his undergraduate education at Gazi University, Department of International Relations, in considering an academic career. Gurler started his master's degree in international relations at Kocaeli University in 2015. He has successfully completed his master's program with a thesis on diaspora policy of the Russian Federation. Later in 2019, he started with his PhD education in the Department of International Relations at Trakya University. He passed the qualification stage, congratulations, and has presented the dissertation proposal. He is at the dissertation level with his topic, Neo-Realist Perspective, Turkey and Russia's International Approaches to Crisis. The case of Syria, apart from these, he lives with his parents in Ankara. So I'd like to begin by passing it off to and allowing some time for Dr. Altinkas to share his screen with us and begin his presentation on Kurds in Turkey, equal partners and discriminated minority. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Okay. So as I said in the beginning of this conversation with the institution, I thought that as a historian, I also wanted to focus on the history more than the recent events. However, the recent events that happened in Turkey in the last couple of days forces me to start with a brief update about the things going on in Turkey, about the Kurdish politics. On Wednesday, one of the largest political parties of Turkey, HDP in Turkish, but HDP in English, was subjected to a criminal prosecution by the chief public prosecutor, and to shut down the political party. It has around 14% of the votes of Turkish population, and now it is in the process of being investigated and it might be shut down. So what I'm going to talk about today is a brief introduction to why this is happening in Turkey, even in the year 2021. So I'm not going to talk about the empires and their policies on the Kurdish people, because there have been many ethnic and religious groups in in Ottoman Empire and in Safavid Empire. So, but when the First World War ended with the Treaty of Sevres, the Ottoman state signed that an independent Kurdish state to cover large portions of the former Ottoman Kurdistan was going to be established. And the Ottoman Kurdistan was divided between Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. And if you look at this map, you will see the proposed boundaries of independent Kurdistan in the green, and there are also some boundaries of Kurdish inhabited areas to have been given the choice to join the independent Kurdistan after August 1922. So with the Treaty of Sevres, there was a hope for the Kurdish people living in the region to have their own independent state. However, the governments like France, Britain, which prepared this Treaty of Sevres and signed it with the Ottoman government in Istanbul, have neglected the fact that there was an ongoing resistance against the occupation of Turkey or Anatolia, let's say, by the Allied powers after the First World War. So when the First World War ended, Britain, France, Italy, and then Greece have started to occupy certain parts of the Ottoman land, which is today called Turkey, mostly. And interestingly, there was a congress held in Erzurum, which is within the boundaries of this independent Kurdistan, that was signed by the Treaty of Sevres by the Istanbul government. And in the Erzurum Congress, the Kurds and the Turks living in Turkey have decided to fight against the occupying powers. And they have elected Mustafa Kemal, later known as Atatürk, as their leader. So this new resistance movement, which was then represented by the Turkish General National Assembly in Ankara, has rejected the Treaty of Sevres. So they said that the Istanbul government has no right to sign such a treaty because they do not represent the people of the country anymore, since they are under the occupation of mainly the British forces. So therefore, when the Ankara government under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal has rejected this treaty, then the Kurdish areas of northern Iraq were placed under a British mandate. The Franco-Turkish treaty, in this equation, when I say Turkish, I mean the Ankara government, incorporated 3 Kurdish areas into Syrian territory under a French-made mandate. And the biggest part of Kurdish region was incorporated into the land which is known as Republic of Turkey today. So when Turkish War of Independence ended in 1922, a treaty was signed between the Allied powers, namely Britain, France, Italy, and Greece, and Turkey, to end the war finally. But this Treaty of Lausanne, which was signed in 1923, is not only a peace treaty, but it is also a treaty that constituted the Republic of Turkey, because when the treaty was signed, the Republic of Turkey was not declared. The Republic of Turkey was declared in October 1923. However, the Treaty of Lausanne was signed in July 1923. So there is a 3 months gap. And this treaty in itself defined the concept of minority, not in the context of race, but in the context of religion. So the tricky part that comes here is this. So the Allied powers which signed the peace treaty or the constitutional treaty of Turkey with the Turkish government, with the Ankara government in 1923, have considered the non-Muslim groups as the minority because they were concerned about the non-Muslims who were living in this territory. The approximate percentage of the non-Muslims living in Turkey was around 15%. So 15% of the population living within the territories of this to be soon established Republic of Turkey were non-Muslims, and the British, French, Italians, and Greeks mainly considered these groups as possibly vulnerable groups. So they were considered as the minorities, and the Kurds who were fighting together with Turks during the War of Independence between 1919 and 1922, which I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, were considered as the Muslim group. So they were not considered as the minority by the Treaty of Lausanne. So this treaty, and especially this article, however, mentions that Article 39 of the treaty, which you can hopefully see on my screen, says that no restrictions should be imposed on the free use by any Turkish national, no matter what their race or religion is, of any language in private intercourse, in commerce, religion, in the press, or in public meetings. So notwithstanding the existence of the official language, the article said that adequate facilities shall be given to Turkish nationals of non-Turkish speech for the oral use of their own language before courts. So when it came to practice, I have read almost 500 court records where the Jewish citizens of Turkey, the Greek originated citizens of Turkey, Armenians who still live in Turkey, have used this article, and they were speaking their own language before the Turkish courts in order to defend themselves in 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, some examples even in 2000. So, and then when the Turkish Republic was established in October 1923, 3 months after the signing of Treaty of Lausanne, because Sultanate and Caliphate were abolished, this was replaced, the religion and the religious authority was replaced with civic citizenship ties in defining the nation. So the Turkish government, the newly established Turkish government, has started to define the nation with civic citizenship ties combined with authoritarian modernism, which I call modernity from above, and also the Turkish nationalism, strongly emphasizing the Turkish culture and ethnic roots of Turks and the country. So, and the Article 88 of the 1924 Constitution of this new republic said that with regards to citizenship, everyone in Turkey is called a Turk without discrimination on the basis of religion or race. So if you were a Jewish national of Turkey, if you were Greek, if you were Armenian, if you were Kurdish, you were going to be called a Turk. So about the non-Muslim minorities, they still had these rights provided by Treaty of Lausanne because they were considered as minorities. So they had all the rights to use when it came to represent themselves, when it came to live their cultures. However, since the Kurdish population of the country was not considered within the minority groups, then when this article passed, which says everyone in Turkey is called a Turk, this was a problem for the Kurds. And if you can see this picture, I know it's a bad one. This is the best I could find. It says, there's the map of Turkey, and then it says, citizen, warn that person, anyone who does not speak Turkish. So there was a huge campaign of speaking Turkish, a new language was introduced, and people were literally forced to speak Turkish. So, and by time, all references to Kurds as a distinct group in society were dropped, the use of word Kurd disappeared, and since the Kemalist revolution, the Atatürk and his revolution was an urban one, the Kurds mostly lived in the backward and mountainous areas of the country, the eastern part of the country, continued to live in pre-modern societies because urbanization in the country was limited to those who were chosen to be, as the elites of the country. So the republic has started to establish its own elites, and the Kurds living in these backward regions were not considered worthy to come and, indoctrinated, most of them, let's say. So And in 1924, a decree banned all Kurdish schools, associations, publications, and seminaries, and names were prohibited. No child, village, or settlement could be named against mainstream Turkish tradition, and Turkey changed over 20,000 Kurdish villages and names of the Kurdish villages and towns into Turkish. This is a map that shows the Kurdish villages or towns that were renamed. As you can see, majority of them are concentrated on the eastern and southeastern region of the country. So, of course, as a result of this, Kurds revolted. There are numerous revolts, but there are two which were which had a wider public opinion, or let's say a public audience. One of them was the Sheikh Said rebellion early in the Republic in 1925, which ended with severe restrictions against Kurdish nationalism because the Turkish army has oppressed the rebellion. Kurdish mosques were closed, Kurdish associations were dissolved, and Kurdish ceremonies and meetings were banned, and many Kurds moved over the borders into Iran or Iraq. This is important. And then in 1937, another revolt happened in Dersim, which was then named as Tunceli. As a result of this revolt, again, the military operation started, and after 4 months, it ended when the heads of the rebels were captured. When multi-party system was introduced in 1950, there was a hope for, you know, the representation of different identities, like a multi-party politics. However, it was not so different in the first 10 to 20 years in Turkish politics. There were different fractions, but they were simply the elites of Turkey, which were raised, and then they had the power of sharing the power. They had a conflict of sharing the power between them. So when Democrat Party won the elections in 1950 in Turkey, the local notables who were exiled as a result of these revolts were allowed to return to their land. I mean, the Kurdish notables, and their property was returned to them. And they acted like brokers in any patronage system. So they delivered votes for government, and state favored for them. So the people, the actual people living in these regions were not so much involved in politics, and they were not active citizens, to be honest. So when 1961 constitution, after a military coup, granted considerably more civil liberties, in October 1970, we see an important milestone in the history of Kurds within Turkey. The Turkish Workers' Party, as you can understand from its name, mainly a socialist party, became the first legal party in Turkey to openly recognize the Kurds. It's an irony because Turkey was a NATO member, an ally of United States and the Western Bloc, but there was a socialist party legally operating in Turkey. Very interesting for anyone who is eager to work on history of the Middle East. This is an interesting topic. So the Turkish Workers' Party said in their resolution that there is a Kurdish people in the East, and the fascist authorities have assimilated them. So this is the first time Kurds were used, and I mean, Kurds were recognized by a political party as a separate identity. However, this party was shut down by the Constitutional Court. When it was shut down, it was time for revolutionary leftist movements to step in. So in Turkey in 1970s, as in the rest of the world, there was a tendency of revolutionary movements, and two youth leaders of these revolutionary movements, Mahir Çayan and Deniz Gezmiş, were both Kurds, and Çayan believed that the Turkish masses were being controlled by a civilian military oligarchy that silenced them by an artificial balance of power. And he said that an armed violence against this balance would make the state to show its true fascist face. So he called for an armed violence against the Turkish military. And this was the first step of organizing into a paramilitary power for the Kurds as well. In 1969, the DKO, the Revolutionary Society of East, was established as the first legal Kurdish organization. This was an association, a society, as I said. In the bulletins, It discussed the economic problems of the region, the oppression of Kurdish villagers by Kurdish local notables. However, it was banned after 1971 because another military semi-coup happened in Turkey in this years. So this is a picture from one of the protests of DDKO in an eastern part of Turkey, in an eastern town called Bitlis. In Kurdish, it says, "We have no water, no food, we are alone, no one cares for us." So they needed someone to care for them. However, when in 1980 another military coup happened, this time the idea of a Turkish Islamic synthesis was instilled into the minds of Turkish society by the military government, which ruled the country for 3 years. And the 1982 constitution, which was introduced by this government, by this military government, and which is still in place in Turkey after 40 years, granted the state extensive powers to restrain democratic expression. And now, this is important, Turkish was declared the mother tongue of all citizens of Turkey. So it was an official language in the beginning of the Republic, but this time it was the mother tongue of all the citizens of Turkey, and certain languages, including Kurdish, were restricted through a new set of laws. So the Article 26 of this new constitution say no language prohibited by law should be used in the expression and dissemination of thought. Any written or printed documents, phonograph records, videotapes of this provision should be confiscated. Remember the Lausanne Treaty, which established the Republic, as I said. The Article 39 said no restrictions shall be imposed on the free use by any Turkish national. However, when we look back to Article 26 of 1982 Constitution, it said no language prohibited by law should be used in the expression and dissemination of thought. So another article of 1982 Constitution, Article 57, stipulated that all political activity must promote the indivisibility of national homeland. And Article 89 provided that no political party may concern itself with the defense, development, or diffusion of any non-Turkish language or culture. So after 1980s, we started to witness the re-emergence of Kurdish nationalism in Turkey. There are 4 main factors for it. One of them is the military regime, which I told about, the 1982 constitution and the harsh policies towards the Kurds. The second one is the emergence of PKK. It is a well-organized force. And then the third one is the Iran-Iraq war, which ended with refugees escaping to Turkey. And the last one is the 1991 Gulf War, another Kurdish uprising, and more than 500,000 of Kurds fleeing to Turkey again. So do you remember that I said a group of Kurds have immigrated to Iran and Iraq after the rebellions and after the introduction of Turkishness? Then these people and their extended families and their grandsons, granddaughters have fled back to Turkey after the Gulf War of 1991. So this is PKK. By Turkish authorities, it is called a terrorist organization. Yes, the means it uses are terrorism. So therefore, it is named as a terrorist organization, no matter which side you would like to flex it to. And its origins are going back to 1974. It was set up by the former members of a Marxist guerrilla organization called the Devgenç, and Öcalan was their leader. And what they did in order to recruit people was a very clever tactic. They recruited the lowest social classes, the uprooted, half-educated village and small town youth who wanted action. So their propaganda was among the university students, workers, and local youth. So PKK has declared a series of statements saying that all land belonging to landowners will be confiscated, all the debts will be cancelled, and they wanted solidarity with other revolutionary forces in Iran, Iraq. They trained with Palestinians in the Middle East region and fought alongside them during the Lebanon crisis against Israel. Kurdish businessmen and workers in Libya supported them. So PKK grew up rapidly. And in 1984, they attacked 2 villages in southeastern Turkey. And they said that they've started a whole-scale guerrilla warfare in Kurdistan, and local rebellions will start in other parts of the country as well. So as a result, Turkey declared a state of emergency in July 1987. And in 1990, we witnessed the return, or let's say introduction, of Kurdish political parties in this equation. So until then, it was mostly the leftist revolutionary movement, rebellions, revolts. But now we see the introduction of a political party. HEP, People's Labour Party, was founded in 1990, and they were of Kurdish origin. They said that the constitution of 1982 was an obstacle to democratization. And however, PKK flags and symbols such as pictures of the Öcalan appeared at HEP meetings. So, and in the parliamentary oath, several HEP-based deputies declared allegiance to Turkey as an indivisible state in Kurdish, which was banned by the 1982 constitution. So the state considered HEP as the political wing of the PKK, as the political side of the PKK because of this. And then the public prosecutor shut down the party. Public prosecutor initiated an indictment, and then party was shut down by constitutional court in 1993. However, HEP deputies managed to keep their parliamentary seats by forming DEP, and they became the members of DEP. But in March 1994, the 7 pro-Kurdish deputies were arrested in the parliament, and it was shut down. The party was shut down in 1994. This is a symbolic picture for Kurdish people in Turkey. This is the detainment of the deputy in Turkish parliament, which is like a huge shame on Turkish democratic experience from the mindset of many political scientists, actually. Then HADEP was founded in 1994, and the party stressed that there was no conflict with the people, but rather with the Turkish government. They said the problem is in the hands of Turkish government, not the Turkish people. However, a couple of years later, in 1999, the leader of PKK, Öcalan, was captured. We don't know who captured it, but there are some reports that say Mossad and CIA played an important role in capturing him and packaging him and giving him to Turkish authorities in Kenya. So he was brought back to Turkey. Then in 2003, HADEP, the political group, was shut down by constitutional court again. Another political party was established, DEHAP, and then another case was opened against them. And then they became, they joined DTP. DTP participated in 2007 elections, secured 22 seats. However, Turkish government kept on blaming that they were like collaborating with the PKK because PKK was still there. The party was shut down again by constitutional court in 2009. This time BDP was formed, and the candidates ran independently, and they secured 36 seats in the parliament. And AKP, the ruling government, spoke of the Kurdish opening, then the democratic opening to appease the nationalist interest. And HDP was founded in 2012, and it participated in peace negotiations between the Turkish government and the PKK. But on the other hand, PKK engaged with Islamic State forces, with ISIS in Syria, who were attacking the Kurdish city. So they became very important figures in the eyes of Western media because they were fighting against ISIS, which was a heroic fight from many angles. And then as a result of this in Turkey, the leader of HDP, Selahattin Demirtas, became a candidate for president who won approximately 10% of the votes, and HDP received 13% of the votes, becoming the 3rd largest parliamentary group. However, since September 2016, the Turkish judiciary started to submit HDP elected officials to anti-terrorism accusations. And as of March 2018, 7 HDP representatives their status of deputy were revoked, and 6 more representatives, including the ex-chairman Demirtas, remained under arrest, and he is still under arrest. And recently, 2 days ago, the Turkish parliament expelled the HDP deputy Gergerlioğlu over terror charges, and then a prosecutor asked the country's top court to shut HDP down for alleged links to PKK. So long story short, what I'm trying to say here is that since the Turkish government has introduced this constitution and these kind of restrictions on people in 1982, no matter how many political or democratic developments happen in the country, there is a pattern of shutting down the political party that represents the Kurdish minority or the Kurdish people in the country. However, HDP does not only represent the Kurdish people, it also represents democratic, mostly socialist tended voters and constituents in Turkish politics. And now, just because their leaders give some speeches about their, let's say, close ties, or let's say support to the Kurds, or let's say the Kurdish guerrillas or terrorists, no matter how you call it, the political party is closed, and approximately 10 million voters of this political party is neglected, which is like a push by the Turkish government to radicalization of the Kurds. It is I can't consider it as an intended push of Turkish government to radicalize the Kurdish voters, and it is very dangerous for the history of Turkey, and it has been so since the beginning of it. So thank you for listening. I know I passed my time very critically, and I'm really sorry about that. Thank you.
Well, just fine. So at this point, we'll just take a moment here. Mr. Gurler is going to go ahead and load up his slide for his presentation. I'm going to put a quick note in the chat. Upon completion of this presentation, I'll be opening the floor for questions. So feel free to start placing those inquiries in the queue here in the chat at your leisure. And with that, Ahmet, please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I can share my presentation. And my presentation topic is the Kurdish factor in Turkish-Russian relation. My presentation plan is a different line of in the plan is started Kurds in history. Kurds divided into 4 different states: Iraq war and its effects, Kurdish regional government, the unsuccessful independence referendum, Kurds in the Arab Spring, Syrian Kurds, policy for the Kurds in Turkish regions, and policy for the Kurds in Russia's regions, and result, introduction and result. Introduction, the reason for choosing the subject, the nations that existed in history gained their independence with the process of nation statehood. Although there are exceptions, there are many examples in history that some elements that cannot preserve their national identity have been assimilated. This process, which especially ensured their assimilation, aimed to ensure their belonging to the state under a main identity. Depending on conjunctural developments, the Kurds who came closer to the goal of creating a nation-state style structure in the 21st century have now become part of 4 different states in Middle East. From this point view, there are still struggling elements as well as declaration of nation-based independence from federative states. While the Balkan countries can be shown as examples at this stage, there are examples such as the independence of Timor-Leste or East Timor in places where state structures are problematic. Almost all countries with Turkey's Kurdish population policies in the region next to them affects the future of the Kurdish movement. Russia's policies, which became more effective in terms of its interests in the region, also gained importance. The Kurds in history, as you know that in the right side, Kurdish inhabited area, divided by 4 states: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Kurds' homeland is the mountains. Kurdish population in this area outside the Russia populated in the various countries, including Kurdish population, Russia, Georgia, Afghanistan, and Central Asian countries, and Lebanon and Jordan. With the intense urbanization and the international migration that have occurred at global scale since the 1950s, the Kurds have also moved out of their traditional living spaces and spread over a wide geography. Kurds divided into 4 different states. As you know that in the First World War, previous than the secret treaty Sykes-Picot signed during the collapse of the state, Kurds were divided in 4 and continued their existence in 4 new independent states, namely Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. This map is the area. Iraq war, independence, Iraq war and its effects, the development of the Iraq war and the overthrow of Saddam have destabilized Iraq. The claim of weapons of mass destruction, which constitute the infrastructure of the Iraq war, has been rooted. In Iraq, in fact, there is a threat of partition into Kurds, Sunni, and Shia Arabs. In the post-war Iraqi government, Kurds were also given the right to represent. For example, the first Iraqi president was Kurdish politician Jalal Talabani. As you know that the Iraqi new constitution process was established in 2005, defining Iraq as a federalist state, consisting of regions and governorates. It recognized both the Kurdistan region and all laws passed by Kurdish regional government since 1992. There is a provision of governorates to create, join, or leave regions. However, as of the late 2015, no new regions have been formed, and KRG remains the only regional government within Iraq. Kurdish regional government, with the current constitution, the states of KRG, which had the right to the de facto autonomy, was accepted as a situation that was discussed in the following years and disrupt the state unity. In addition of all of this, the authority of oppose and change the laws in Iraq has led to a sovereignty conflict between the Baghdad administration and the Kurdish administration. Hence, Masoud Barzani, the president of the Kurdistan region, proposed the creation of a new formal government based on partnership that eliminates the dominance of a group over the other, and argued that the most suitable model to solve the problems within the unity of Iraq is the confederative administration. The unsuccessful independence referendum held in the September 25 to 2017 question was, do you want to Kurdish settlements outside the Kurdistan region and Kurdistan region to be an independent state? 92.73% of the voters voted yes in response to this question. After the referendum, the leader of Kurdistan regional government, Masoud Barzani, acted for independence, but the independence process unsuccessful. Kurds in Arab Spring, even though Arab Spring started as a popular movement, it evolved into the establishment of governments that moved away from the people, the spread of the Arab Spring from the Egypt to the entire Middle East geography, and bringing instability with it also enabled conspiracy theorists. Israel, which does not want to be a strong Arab state in the Middle East, destabilizes all governments and uses the Kurds. Syrian Kurds, as you know, that the autonomous administration of North and East Syria, also known as Rojava, is a de facto autonomous region in northeastern Syria. It consists of self-governing sub-regions in the areas of Afrin, Jazira, Euphrates, Raqqa, Tabqa, Manbij, and Deir ez-Zor, as you know the right map. The region's administration had also been criticized by various partisan and non-partisan sources about authoritarianism, support of the Syrian government, Kurdification, and has faced some accusations of war crimes. Since 2016, Turkish and Turkish-backed Syrian rebel forces have captured parts of Rojava through a series of military operations against the SDF. Policy for the Turkish regions since 2012, when the first YPG pockets appeared, Turkey had been alarmed by the presence of PKK-related forces at its southern border, and grave concern when the YPG entered an alliance with the US to oppose ISIS forces in the region. The Turkish government refused to allow aid to be sent to the YPG during the siege of Kobani. This led to the Kurdish riots, the breakdown of the 2013 to 2015 peace process in July 2015, and the renewal of armed conflict between the PKK and the Turkish forces. According to the Turkish pro-government newspaper Daily Sabah, the YPG's parent organization to the PYD provided the PKK with militants, explosives, arms, and ammunition. In August 2016, Turkey launched Operation Euphrates Shield to prevent the YPG-led Syrian Democratic Forces from linking Afrin Canton with the rest of Rojava and capture Manbij from the SDF. These are Turkey's intervened nation process in Syria. In early 2018, Turkey launched Operation Olive Branch alongside Turkish-backed Free Syrian Army to capture the Kurdish majority Afrin and oust the YPG plus SDF from region. After that, in 2019, Turkey launched Operation Peace Spring against the SDF. On 9 October, the Turkish Air Force launched airstrikes on border towns. The operation was condemned by the international community, and human rights violations by the Turkish forces were reported. However, these events caused tensions within KGK as differences emerged between the PKK and PYD leadership. The PYD was determined to maintain the regional autonomy and offer a continued alliance with the United States. In contrast, the PKK Central Command was now willing to restart negotiations with Turkey, distrusted the US, and emphasized the international success of its leftist ideology over the survival of Rojava as administrative entity. Policy for the Kurds in Russia's region. The Russians have used the Kurds, who are the people of the region, for nearly 200 years in order to gain action in the Middle East region. The Russians who have established very close relations with the Syria case, and since the establishment of Syria did not need the Kurds against the Syrian administration. In fact, Kurdish policy of the Russians in this country has been the same with the Kurdish policy of the Syrian government. Both the Moscow and the Damascus governments have almost ignored the Kurds. In 2011, there was a sharp transformation in the Russian Kurdish policy. Then, as you know, that the other countries intervened in Syria, but Russia vetoed in UN's embargo decision on February 4, 2012. It strengthened Assad's hand in the international area. Putin even got angry with these military exercises and declared that they will defend Syria against any possible intervention. This rapprochement step of the received a positive response from the PYD, and they started counting the Russians. What are the reasons that motivate both sides to behave like that? For the Russia, the PYD is a group that fights against its own enemy, ISIS. Therefore, there is a union between Russia and the PYD, such as opposing the common enemy, and ISIS is their common enemy on the both sides. The Assad regime is their common friend. Kurds are the one of the most effective policy tools for Russia, which wants to establish interest-oriented relations with the regional states. For years, Kurds were considered as a political card against Turkey and Iran in the region. Even though Iran and Russia are in close cooperation now, in case the war in Syria ends, Iran's search for influence the region will emerge. Russia's biggest rival on Syria is undoubtedly in the USA. In the event that the civil war is over, this competition will emerge with all its nakedness, and the both sides will want to see the Syrian state on their side. Russia knows that the Kurds are getting too close to the USA and sees this risk. Sorry. As you know that the Turkey, Russia, Iran, and US supply lines in Syria in this map. I can pass the map. And the conclusion, after the Gulf War in 1991, a US-led force was formed, British and French airplanes and helicopters to protect Kurds. The operation provide comfort. In this process, in the north of the 36th parallel and the south of the 32nd parallel in Iraqi airspace was declared the no-fly zone, and this zone was banned from the Iraqi Air Force. This practice lasted 12 years until 2003, when the US occupation began. Operation Provide Kurd especially helped the Kurdish state on northern Iraq. This process disturbs Turkey, Iran, and Syria. What the conjunctural changes in this area, Salih Muslim, especially the talks in Turkey 2014 in Ankara. But then, as a result of the Turkey domestic policy developments of the period, the Syrian Kurds became enemies. The operations performed have emerged during this process. Cyclical developments also show that this process is only a short-term solution to Turkey. It is obvious that the Greek states will support the next states in the independence process, especially Russia and USA. Independence movements have always progressed step by step towards success in history. Countries of the region at the same time as Turkey's continued long past time, but gradually they regarded as errors must be convinced. What we are experience reflects this process. Finished my presentation.
Thank you very much. Terrific. Thank you very much, Ahmet. Sir, I appreciate that. As I said, you can go ahead and place questions in the queue, and I will pull those up. But in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and provide the first question to allow some time to get inquiries loaded. The first one that I have is for Dr. Altinkas. And in the closing, you provided a summary suggesting that Turkey should work on other methods or approaches to incorporate Kurdish political parties within the system, the broader Turkish system, which might reduce, or you believe will reduce, radicalization of youth. In that suggestion, in what way would extending or promoting advancing rights with those political parties be in the national interest of Turkey? I'm just going to ask that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So in the Middle East, before I answer that, I have to remind everyone that there is this tendency of conspiracy thinking. It is very high in Turkey. So whenever someone steps out representing the Kurds, representing any other ethnic groups, any other minorities within the country, the majority of the people and the media and the government start to, full up or instill people with the ideas that there is an external power behind them, that United States or Russia is doing its best in order to provoke these people against the national unity of Turkey. You can sit at a coffee table in a coffee house and listen to the people next door on the next table speaking about the big picture, how the Americans are using the Kurds in Turkey, how they want to destroy the country, etc. So this is instilled and by the government, by the media, in order to consolidate the people under a national unity concept, which is very normal for each nation state. I understand this. Yes, nation states need an other, whether internal, but mostly external, in order to justify and legitimize their policies. So, however, I think the Turkish government, and especially the majority of people who live in Turkey, forget the fact that the Republic of Turkey was established with the coalition of the Muslim groups within the country. As I said in the beginning of my presentation, the Treaty of Lausanne, which has established the country, is the foundation of the Republic. And it says that there is a minority group which is considered as the non-Muslims, and there's the majority which are the Muslims, which makes the Kurds as one of the two major constituents of the Muslim group as the majority. And of course, the other minorities, the non-Muslim minorities, which are also the constituents of this republic. So however, unfortunately, by time, most of these non-Muslim minorities were forcefully pushed out of the country by some events, by some racist events. And today, the percentage of non-Muslims in Turkey is around 1%. So this brings us to the concept that the minority in Turkey is unfortunately the Kurdish people now. So, but the Kurdish people are one of the constituents of the republic. So I think the Turkish government should emphasize this fact instead of trying to find an external or an internal enemy which continuously tries to undermine its existence. The Turkish government should emphasize the fact, the historical fact, that this republic was established by these two constituents, and this is the only way to keep the country together as a national body, embodiment. This is what I think. So therefore, I believe this is the only way to keep the Turkey as a country together. Otherwise, when we look at the developments in the region, such as the northern Iraq, such as the northern Syria, as Mr. Gurler has very clearly described about Syria recently, I believe that an establishment of a Kurdish country, Kurdistan in the region, is inevitable. And if Turkey keeps on pushing its Kurdish constituents away from the legal politics, these people will soon do their best to join this newly established country in a very near future. So that's why I believe the government should reconsider what it has been doing since the beginning of the republic, especially. So thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to put this question out. You could answer either or sequentially. This is from Dr. Branham, who's asking, what motivations are there for Turkish leaders to minimize the treatment of the Kurds as the other? You mentioned unity and keeping the country together. Is that sufficient, or are there other reasons?
So is this question to me?
This could be answered by either or both. Again,
Okay.
I could read that again if you would like. Would you like me to read it over again?
No. I'm just checking it again. Thank you. Yeah. What motivations other than unity and keeping the country together? Well, so that's a good question. Of course, the economic motivation, because the leaders of the country need to understand that the Kurds constitute more than 25% of the public, and they do not only live in the eastern and southeastern regions of the country. Majority of them are living in Istanbul, in large cities of the country, and when the government keeps pushing them out of the legal political system by constantly shutting down the political parties that represent the Kurdish people, eventually it also pushes these people away from the legal economic system. So these people, which constitute 25% of the society, also have a huge economic power. So the leaders of the country should realize, if they eventually lead this into a separation of the country, then the economic power of the country will decrease radically. So that's why I believe there is political factors such as keeping the country together, economic factors such as keeping the economy of the country stronger, and of course the identity issue. I mean, Turkey is considered as, I don't know if you like it or not, but that's a fact. Huntington and his famous article Clash of Civilizations considers Turkey as a torn country after all. So Turkey is a torn country which is between West and East. Recently, I teach Middle Eastern studies, and whenever I teach Middle Eastern politics, now Turkey is considered as a Middle Eastern country. But 50 years ago, Turkey was considered as a Middle East country on the way to become a European one. Now Turkey is no longer considered a European one, and if it keeps on pushing a large group of the people away, then it will turn into one of those Middle Eastern countries which have so many problems regarding ethnicity, maybe civil war, maybe a failed state eventually. So that's why I believe it is also important for identity as well. So thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
I answered too long, sorry.
No, not at all. As has been pointed out, we got about another 10 minutes, so I at least want to get one more good question in here. And one of them, when I look at, Ahmet, I'm looking at your piece, and you're talking about the Russian relationship in the region with the Kurdish peoples. Has a very unusual relationship with Turkey as well. So if, in looking at the Russian-Kurdish relationship, considering the Russian influence and the use of ethnic groups to stand up autonomous regions in places like Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova. At what risk do you think a relationship between the Kurdish and the Russians might actually be counterproductive to advancing the Kurdish quest for that identity in that region?
I think this process in the Russian policymakers' decision in this area and support in the Syria and Syria Kurdish autonomous region. This would be is a familiar historical events in the 2007 in the Munich nuclear conference in the nuclear conference in the Munich 2007, and Putin said that we have a unipolar international system in this area, in this today's world. This would be US and Russia influencing region and influencing state by state. Russia hardly offensive political decisions solved the region, such as 5 days war in 2008 in Georgia, after then Crimea independence referendum in 2014, but this would be a non-governmental organization. Wagner sent the area and served the Russia political makers' decision, and other part of the US intervention area in the after the Arab Spring process, such as you know, that the Libya process, and they are sent a Wagner group in the geographical area and intervene the US interest and US political decisions not successful in the geography. And this will be, we can live in a unipolar international relations in this today's and in this world. This would be a typical form of the Cold War Cold War processing area in the after the after the 1950s Korea process or etc.
Okay. Thank you very much. Did you have anything that you'd like to add to that, Dr. Altinkas, or?
Very yes, maybe I'm not to that question, but if you're not going to have any other questions, I would like to share a very personal anecdote with the attendees and with you, if it's possible.
Yeah, sure. We got some time left.
Thank you. So when you were introducing us, you mentioned that about my CV. You said that I pursued a master's degree at King's College London, and my dissertation was about Kurds in Turkey. So and it is a fact. Yes, when I was in London, I wanted to study on this topic. I wrote my dissertation about this, and then since I was a teaching / graduate assistant back in Turkey, when I returned to Turkey after my master's degree, I wanted to begin with my PhD immediately, because now I have a master's degree from King's College London. It's one of the good universities and colleges in the world. This is how the university rankings say. So then I went to my university and asked them, look, guys, I have my master's degree. Now I want to begin with my PhD. Is everything fine? They said, no, wait. You need to have an equivalency from the Higher Education Council in Turkey, which is the national institution which provides any kind of equivalencies for any foreign degrees. I said, okay, yeah, sure. What should I do? They say, you need to translate your dissertation into Turkish. Okay, I said, okay. So I translated every word of my dissertation, which was about Kurds in Turkey, into Turkish. I submitted it to Higher Education Council for an equivalency so I could start my PhD. Approximately 5 days later, not more than that, 5 days later, I received an institutional letter from Higher Education Council, which said that my equivalency application was rejected because the topic I was working on was a very sensitive topic, and the things I mentioned, which were simply all the historical background that I just tried to share with you until 2000s, were a little bit critical for Turkish academia. So I had to start a second and another master's degree in order to start my PhD eventually. So therefore I have 2.5 master's degrees. One of them from King's College London, which is not accepted by the Turkish authorities. So what I'm trying to say here is that 20 years passed since then, more than 20 years, but nothing has changed in Turkey. So this problem is something that should be discussed at every level of society, not only in academia, not only in these discussions, not only in these meetings, but like on everywhere. But it is a forbidden topic, and the problem is the people have started to learn to live with this, and it is very tragic in that sense. I just wanted to share this on a very personal note, and thank you for listening patiently.
No, thank you for sharing that with us. And I appreciate your time, Dr. Altinkas, and Ahmet. Sir, I appreciate you joining us today with your presentation, information, and spending this time. So with that, I believe that I'm right at the last minute or two, and our gracious host at some point will turn us off, and we'll move on to the next presentation. So enjoy the rest of the conference. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.